welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is the postgame pod following the bowl game, the final game of the 2022 season for Oklahoma. Oklahoma loses to Florida State 35-32, or 32-35 as I like to look at it, as OU is always first in my mind. It was sort of an apropos ending to the season, a microcosm of what we saw throughout the season, but maybe some new positives that we didn't see at other points in the season, especially down the stretch, that I think are things to carry on into next season with some positives, but also some negatives and some concerns that linger. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Connor.
Christian.
So we are four strong. Our hearts and prayers go out to Jay and his family as they're going through a little bit of hardship right now, for sure. Hope that things turn around for the better. Wish Jay could be with us tonight, but he can't. Well, we watched the game, and I don't know. We were just a few plays away from being really, really happy, and yet they found a way to rip our hearts out in a way that probably wouldn't have happened had the game lived up to the expectations, which is a backhanded way of saying we exceeded expectations and outperformed. We only lost by 3 points. The line opened up at 7.5 and moved to 10, where we were supposed to lose by double digits, and we did not do that.
No
we
moral
were
victories, though.
Competitive all the way down, so kind of a moral victory, I think, is the way I would look at it. So we outperformed.
It was the definition of a roller coaster ride of a football game. I mean, there were high highs and low lows, and at the end of the day, we finished just on the other side of low. So I guess just on the other side of high. We were a little low at the end of it. So I don't know. It was. I think you said it well, Steve. Outperforming, in my opinion, based on all the talk and what Florida State had coming in and who we did not have coming in.
And how that deteriorated even from what our expectations were coming into the game. We lost a few players, or were down a few players that we didn't expect to be down, just right out of the gate to begin the game. We thought we were going to have at least one more lineman, who was Chris Murray, who didn't play, who the expectation was going to play. Now, Mims did play the entire game, which was something that we didn't know would happen or not. Yep. Although we did say in the pregame we thought that he would play at least to start, most likely, and that he would probably play
a half.
He'd probably play the stretch if it were a close game, and it was a close game, so he did. I guess our prediction was right.
He gave it a good go.
Yeah.
He did. I mean, it was a legitimate run. I mean, I don't think there's any sort of slack or anything that he gave.
Trying not to get hurt situation. He
went up for every ball, and he came down with a couple of them that I don't think any of our other receivers probably come down with. So
no, I'm proud of what I saw out of him, and honestly, I don't know. I don't obviously grade players with any precision for the NFL. Not that those guys necessarily have a great track record of doing it, but he, in my mind, in my estimation, probably could be rewarded for coming back another season. He's at a wide receiver role. It's not like a running back role where you just got so much mileage on the treads there. He can improve on a lot of things, and I would think potentially improve his draft stock. I wish him the best. I hope he makes the best decision for him, whatever it happens to be. But it sounds like from what we're hearing, he's probably played his last game as a Sooner.
It's an interesting give and take, and that new kind of found concern that we have with NIL and transfer portal with, if Mims were to come back, in my mind, you have Mims coming back, you have Stoops coming back, you have Farouk coming back, who are your big 1, 2, 3. That's one spot that's really open for one of the new guys, whether it be Gibson or Anderson or one of these up-and-coming freshmen. That's one spot to really fight for that you're getting. So part of me wants to see some of these guys rotate out and rotate some of the new guys in to preserve some of the quality that we have. But after what we saw tonight, I mean, it's hard to say, someone like a Marvin Mims isn't just completely valuable to be able to stay around one more year, increase his draft stock, and also just help the team out a little bit for what we need down the stretch.
I think if he's got a second or third round grade, he's not going to improve to a first rounder.
Do you think it's a second round grade?
I think it's probably a mid-third round grade.
Yeah, but he's got 2 or 3 catches a night.
But I also don't think that he can go to an early second just based on his size.
When my big thing is I don't think we've seen anything out of Gabriel that shows he's going to have a
better season.
better season next year. I mean, Mims did have a couple drops this year in key games like Iowa State, but for the most part, he's been open. He's just been overshot on a couple occasions. But when he's had jump balls like tonight, he went and got them. He did what he could do. I just don't think he can do anything more next year if Gabriel decides to come back. It just depends. I mean, we don't know. We don't know.
And he can prove that at the combine. I mean,
right.
They go through enough drills that he'll prove that he's not going to drop the ball in the combine.
Right.
And
Yeah, you say prove. I don't know if that necessarily proves it. He dropped a lot of balls in game time decisions or game time.
My biggest question for him
when you
is,
say a lot of balls, I mean, it might be 5 the whole season.
You don't get a lot of throws. That 5 is a lot.
my biggest question for him is how good is his route running ability? I mean,
And his blocking.
everything that we see is a go ball down the sideline,
Yeah.
where he can go up and get those. So maybe that is his value.
Does he fight his way to get
But
open on a crossing route and
You don't.
such?
You see some of the stuff where he's gone over, cut back into the middle of the field on a post, but any sort of complex route running or option route running, I don't necessarily know if I've seen it.
Well, I think that's so hard, especially with Levy coming in and starting a new offense. We don't know what's been called for him.
Yeah.
I mean, from what we've seen, he may have only gotten go balls as his route.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the issue is that we're obviously not running. I don't think our receivers are running complex routes. I think they're
not.
It's
Yeah.
basic.
Well, one of the things we touched on in the pregame the other night was that one of Gabriel's clear weaknesses is throwing the ball over the middle.
Right.
And so it's hard to evaluate a receiver when your quarterback simply is inept in that one department. And that's a pretty important facet of the game
Right.
for the receiving game, passing game. Switching gears a little bit, but along the same lines, let's talk about the running back situation. I think the running backs look good, very good. I think Sawchuk looked excellent. I think Barnes looked really good.
Costly
And,
fumble.
A costly fumble, but fumbles happen.
Overall, looked
Yeah, I mean,
really
I'm not,
good.
fumbles are fairly random, and shoot, not having a lot of experience will do that to you, and we'll talk about that in a second. But he was running, they were all running with a backup line, 4 new guys on the line, and they were breaking tackles, showing some downhill speed, finding holes, hitting the seams. I was very, very impressed by what I saw out of them running the ball. I'm pretty positive on the running game. Jay texted during the game saying, he thought that was a real positive, and I think he's right. But one of the things that I think, if we want to flip the coin and criticize, where was Sawchuk all year? If what we saw tonight, he didn't develop this in the last 15 practices. So why wasn't he on the field more and getting more touches from what we saw? Would we have been a better offense if we would have rotated in more running game, more diversity in the running game?
But to that point, I'll go a step further. Where were more snaps for Barnes as well? When we saw Barnes put his foot in the ground a couple times tonight, and I understand, you look at Eric Gray's stat line and what he did this season, but that was under a multitude of carries, a massive amount of carries and
touches
in general.
Exactly,
Correct.
yeah.
So, as we were talking about before the pod, it does raise another concern with. I'll even go as far as not just Levy. The concerns are there with Levy, in my opinion, and easy to address. But it also goes back to DeMarco. Why is DeMarco not sitting there fighting for guys, saying, "This guy can be a valuable part of our game plan. What are we doing to
Maybe
mix
he
it
is,
up?"
and they're not listening to him.
So maybe.
Or maybe he's too conservative himself.
And maybe
he
that's
is
why
thinking,
we
"I'm
hear
gonna go with
rumors
this
of
one
DeMarco
guy."
getting a little fed up with or looking elsewhere or possibly not being a coach next year.
I mean,
So,
where would you rank Florida State's line if they were Big 12? They're probably
Defensive line?
Yeah, defensive line, probably top 3.
Easy.
have to?
And we ran 260 yards against them.
And it was not- we didn't blink
with
an eye.
4 non-starting offensive linemen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So to me, if we had our normal offensive line, and you have guys in there that can blow people off the ball against Florida State, why weren't we doing this on the 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 this year with Barnes and Sawchuk?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Well, to the flip side of that, Beedenbow's got to be pretty excited for what he saw tonight from those young guys up
Yeah.
front. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
You brought that up. I think someone made a point that the 4 guys that were out there tonight had more potential and more talent than
Yep.
the 4 that started this year. So I mean, maybe the offensive line had a bigger, better night than we thought they did, and that's why there were better holes, and that's why we were able to run. But I mean, like you said, this still is our backup line. This is the line that we didn't start with.
They struggled in pass blocking.
Yeah,
a lot of the snaps from Congo were just
This is really bad.
Again,
And he's not coming back.
And some of them
He's
were
not
off to
coming
the
back.
left or off to the right. And
Or
some of them
over
were
high.
just floaters.
it's crazy.
Yeah, the
how you
floaters are
have
bad.
So much time. He's been the starter the last 4 games of the year.
Yeah.
And then you had the month long between the Texas Tech game and now, and you can't get down a simple thing like snapping a football 4
Directly
yards,
back.
3 yards behind you,
Yeah.
however far he stands behind you.
And I think
the
with
same thing you do every day.
every
Yeah,
single day.
people. I mean, junior high kids do this. It's not complicated. It's not. You don't need a ton of arm strength. It's literally just repetition.
It's the same motion.
Yeah, and I mean it's baffling.
Do
and
it
with,
again.
How
with
that's our
something
best
with something
option.
like that, it
Baffling.
has to be like, this guy gets in a game and he's more focused on the dude he's about to stick,
Right.
as opposed to the snap that's about to go back.
But
to
both
Gabriel.
are the same importance.
No,
Yes.
I-
mean,
no,
getting
I-
the ball to
no,
the
I
quarterback
completely
in a timely
agree.
Fashion,
No,
I completely
in the right
agree.
direction.
That's my
is very important.
thinking is that he's not thinking about the snap. He's thinking about
Yeah.
where do I block. He is the quarterback of the offensive line. He's trying to call the plays. So is there too much going on in his mind? Is it he needs more experience? Are we asking too much?
I think it's the last of those, and maybe even the former. Of
And I
those.
worry about
I
that.
don't think it's asking too much.
I don't think
it's
so.
the normal center job
if
that
you're-
every kid has done since
No,
junior high.
not asking too much to hike the ball. Asking too much of everything else you're trying to get him to do. Are you running too complex of a blocking scheme that, and you're asking him to
Levy
to
doesn't
make
run
reads?
a complex anything, so I don't see how the blocking scheme can be complex. The previous staff ran way more complex.
I will say
DT
though, like
counters and all that kind
with
of
a couple
stuff.
plays tonight, to your point a second ago, Lucas, where you said the pass blocking was not there. Where we saw the play where we fake the screen to the right, fake the screen to the left, and then try to find something over the middle. That's not something Levy's drawn up all year. So I will give a little credit there to say at least we're diving into something that we're not used to diving into, but now might not be the time for that with a line that's not going to give you any results.
The
at
one
end of
thing
the
I
day.
will say on that, I love that play call. There's PI on that play call that stopped the touchdown happening, or at least a holding. However, I don't want to just give Levy a tick for creativity, because that's been, we said we've
I
seen
saw
that
that play
play
twice
multiple
yesterday.
times. Yeah,
I
it
saw
was
it
originally ran by the
twice
49ers. It was ran yesterday. He's
So
he saw
creativity-
it and said
yeah.
it worked. I'm going to copy that.
Creativity is the wrong word. The word maybe I'm looking for is just expansion of his
Right.
very, very, very basic or seemingly basic scheme that he's ran that's been unsuccessful.
How many jet sweeps can you really run? That, I
Shit.
feel like
We
Not
ran
enough.
a couple of
We had a couple
expansionary,
successful-
creative, however you want to term it, different ones than we've seen, but it just adds to the repertoire of a lot of jet
we,
sweeps.
we
Right.
did better blocking the edge and got to the corner a couple times.
That's only
today.
gonna go
In the
so
defense,
far,
we
though.
had a lot of
But-
success with it this
right
this
but,
game.
I mean, having that many in your offense,
It worries.
It can't be a bread and butter.
No, it is not a bread and butter. That's something you run twice a game
To
when
catch
the
them
defense
off guard.
looks like the right setup that you can run against
right.
it.
Right. It's not
It's not run it 7
it's
times
not your
a game.
identity.
No.
And maybe that's extreme, but it seems like we run that to excess, just like it seems like we throw the behind the line of scrimmage to excess, just like we don't throw across the middle nearly enough. So there's a lot to criticize and worry about. One of the things I'd like to criticize was, again, a version of clock management. When we call several timeouts, including 2 in the second half and the third quarter, that were very costly down the stretch, obviously, because we are in a situation, as it turns out, as you think you might be in a close game, that you're going to need every second of clock you can, and we don't have many seconds of clock
We had
to work
55
with,
left to end the game.
which was kind of amazing because we got a stop on third down to force a field goal.
we thought it was going to be like West Virginia where they just bled the clock all the way out and kicked a field goal.
One
to
first
beat
down
us.
and it would have been.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and what's funny is we get out there offensively, and it's like that's what our offense was expecting too. It looked like
Yeah.
our offense did not look like they were ready to be out there to
No.
go and say, I
No.
need to go get, however 50 yards to go get a field goal.
It was that was really frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. He had done a good job early in the game, or at the end of the second half and other points in the game in the third quarter, of getting and exploiting opportunities. We were running the ball at the end of the half. At times when you said you probably shouldn't be running the ball
Right,
if you want to
right.
score.
That was all
and yet
game.
He was doing that and getting success, and then whatever that was, he kind of went into a shell, it seemed like, in that final drive, and it doesn't help. Obviously, it's compounded when you get a couple penalties. One of them's going to run some of the precious seconds off the clock. So it just is a when it rains, it pours situation. But it wasn't, you were not in a great position in terms of timeouts so that you can manage the clock, and then you didn't help it by making calls that really put you in a position to win, I thought. So again, lots of concerns about, Brent Venables is the one who presumably called a couple of those timeouts. One of them was just to yell at the defense, I guess.
It was like a basketball timeout when things aren't going your way and you just blow a timeout so you can yell at your guys and get them refocused.
In the first quarter,
and he did that in the third quarter.
That makes sense. In the second quarter, that makes sense. In the third quarter, that doesn't make sense.
I mean, in the first half, we had the punt team out there, and then it looked like, and then Daniel Parker calls a timeout. I don't know.
The sideline might have been telling him.
Yeah, we might have had a fake called, and then the lineup of Florida State prevented us from running the fake,
which we didn't like it to begin with.
Right. Yeah, we didn't like a fake in that situation.
We would rather just have the offense out there and go for it, or
Especially
just punt
it was
the
in
damn ball.
that would have been one that you just go for.
Yeah.
Right. It was a yardage area where you would think,
it was fourth
just
and
leave the
forward
offense
about
out.
midfield.
Right, exactly.
But it was after a 3rd and 11 where we run the ball.
Yeah. The best place to fake it is where the defense is not going to expect it. If you're if they're already set up thinking, hey, they may go for it here, don't call a fake.
And
It's
if you get a
stupid.
timeout, so you called the fake,
Yeah.
presumably, and they call a timeout because they're like, this shit ain't going to work. Why do you not put your offense out there at that point?
Right.
Why do you go ahead and punt the ball?
You already burnt the timeout.
Now, the clock situation was one right at the end of the half where I can see them saying, well, if we give them the ball here at midfield versus where we gave them the ball, it is a better situation for us. And it worked out. The punt worked out just fine. But all of it is just another kind of coaching question that gives you some worry about their handling of the game, their management of the game. But in the second half is when it really cost us dearly.
I just think it's so surprising to see. We've had this conversation a lot this year, and it's
It's like
just,
they're not listening to our pod.
Well, it's just so striking to for a guy that's been in the game for 2+ decades.
Yeah.
And I know that he hasn't been the one who's responsible for making those decisions and understanding that side.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that doesn't come along with it. I'm an average fan, and I feel like I understand the concept a little
There's
bit.
no way, you could be so deep into the forest to not to see the trees
Yeah.
that you wouldn't understand the situation there.
And I know he knows more about it, and he knows his team better than I and all that, but it's like, man, it's just that a lot of this stuff seems like logic.
They need a
Like
clock
just-
management guy.
Yeah.
And they need an end zone analyst.
That's
to
what
put the finishing touches on his team.
Well, they already got the end zone analyst.
I think what
heard.
they need, maybe what he needs, is
not
here in the off season to take some time off to maybe sit down with Bob Stoops or sit down with some other veterans of the game.
Quit
some other
hosting
people,
women's camps.
and talk about what?
Quit hosting women's camps.
Oh, right, and just spend some
And wasting
time
a weekend.
thinking about stuff in a philosophical sense. How, as a coach, do you want to be in general situation or in specific hypothetical situations? What do you want to do? How do you behave? That way you get some rules set in your mind, because if you look at the great coaches and the times where they really, really shine in the latter half of their career, it's when they're leaning on that experience because they've been in those situations so many times. Well, accelerate that as much as you can.
Right.
Go talk to those guys and go think about that. Just sit in a dark room and think
Gut
about it.
feeling.
Well, Dabo did
Yeah.
it to someone this year where he duped them into calling a timeout, and they pan over to the sideline where Dabo's at, and Dabo's literally laughing because they called a timeout when it was just the most absurd thing. Like, they gave him a different look. They call a timeout, literally waste a timeout in similar situations that we saw tonight. And Dabo's over there, playing chess, right? So, I mean, that's what we want. And I think the part that strikes me a little bit as well is Venables is a very involved, frantic guy. I think he's just very in it. I want him to pull himself out, and I want him to see, hey, you go look at Bob Stoops in his prime or in those years where it's just calm, cool, collective. He's going to lose his mind a little bit on some stuff, but he's like, I'm in control.
It's almost like he knew when to lose his mind and how to lose his mind.
It's kind of interesting, though, because I heard so many OU fans at the beginning of the year saying Brent was too calm, that he was on the sidelines and he wasn't yelling enough at the defense or yelling enough at players.
Right.
Now he's kind of switched to yelling more at players, and now people want him to back off. But I do think there is that happy medium. You have to have both. I think maybe Brent is a little confused at which one he needs to do more, because we saw multiple times where he's chasing guys down the field to go yell at them.
Not even chasing them up the sideline as
right.
they come off the field.
But I do think there's such a wealth of that, wisdom at the University of Oklahoma, that he has too many guys to reach out to that he could talk to and kind of have these sit-down talks and kind of figure out strategy and everything he could use at the, to be a great coach, to not use it. So.
Well, and sometime in the relatively dead period of late January and February, go spend an extended weekend with Dabo in the Bahamas or wherever these rich guys go, and sit there and talk and say, what am I doing wrong that I'm not thinking about? What would you give me some wisdom?
I would have thought for all of his defensive experience that he would have been better at lobbying referees for holding calls.
No.
Because
good segue.
I'd like to see how many holding calls Clemson had in the last, say, 5 seasons, just to see if they're getting more than a normal other ACC team, let's say.
Or just an appropriate number.
Yeah, because one, throughout an entire season of football, is egregious.
Right.
Well, it wasn't an entire season. It was just the Big 12
Big
play.
12.
But
well,
still.
through the bowl game, too.
Yeah.
Throw that one in.
Yeah, so 2 through 10 games.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
No, 1 through 10 games.
We got one
it was
tonight.
one.
Did they not call one tonight?
No.
Oh, you're right.
Not
No,
a
there was
single
not a
one.
holding call. No.
It's one.
Out of the 5 blatant ones which we saw, none of them were called.
Yeah. So that is
It's
something.
sickening.
I mean, I don't know how much you can do in terms of in advocacy or whatever, but
I'm not asking him to be a whiny little bitch on the sideline, but
Yeah.
I can remember Bob specifically getting in a referee's face after some egregious stuff not being called and getting a makeup call pretty quickly afterwards. Because
it's part
they
of the strategy
respected
of the
Bob's.
Yeah.
well, I would look not just for
intensity.
that. I would look for they realize 3 games later it changes behavior for the long term, and they realize they can't keep doing this, or they got to look for it, and they got to get sensitive to it.
Well, I'm not asking players to sit and bitch and moan and go get in but if you're,
We don't need LeBron out there.
I saw Ko got mugged inside like 2 times tonight. Like, don't go getting up in the ref's face, but like, hey, ref, like, homeboy's grabbing me, and I need you to look inside.
Now,
Just
when
look
the
inside.
play ends and his shoulder pads hanging out.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, all I did was rush the passer, and for some reason my entire jersey's hanging off my shoulder.
I'm a
pad.
little confused.
Yeah, what's going on here?
Well, and not just that, it's actually in the play. From talking to refs, one of the things you have to do is you have to continue to run through the play. And you've got to be demonstrative. You got to throw your arms up and act like they are stopping me.
Yeah.
What is happening? I can't. They are holding me. Yeah. And because if you just stop, they're not going to give you any credibility for it. They're going to say you're not trying.
Yeah, I'm not looking for soccer flopping. I'm looking for legitimate. I'm trying to get to the guy, and I can't.
And you didn't let me.
So some of that's coaching.
Yeah.
Some of that's the coaching saying the technique is not just do this to get past the guy, but when they're holding, here's how you have to communicate that to the refs.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, I think some of it is, there are some guys who just believe in football, don't leave it up to the refs. If the refs are part of the deciding factor of the football game, then you haven't done your part. But at the same time, it's such a, like we've talked about, it's such a strategy going forward the rest of the game or even games down the line. If you're not campaigning, if you're not teaching these guys how to get these calls, you're never going to get any help, and you're going to get completely screwed the rest of the year. So, it's a little bit more of just being like, oh, okay, yeah, they missed a call that play, but I'm still going to go work my butt off. It's not even that. It's not,
And you gotta look
it's
at-
not an honorable thing.
Yeah, you got to look at Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis for some of that too, where they're coming over to BV and saying, "Hey, like my guy's getting killed over here."
And like you just said,
I
let
need
the
you
ref
guys.
know.
I need you guys to advocate. Like I need you to advocate right now.
Well, and like you said with Chavis, he's such a demonstrative guy. You would think on the sideline he'd be doing something as well to the refs.
And I don't look close enough to know he's not.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like he is.
I don't know
It
if
doesn't
BV
seem
lets
like
that
it's
happen.
happening.
Which is crazy because BV, like we've said, used to be that guy at Clemson. Used to have a hold me back guy. And now our whole sideline seems to be so much more calm.
I don't know. Maybe we're just focused on the mechanics of it right now. Maybe we're just focused on, hey, get it right and like play correctly, play how I want you to play.
Maybe
And
so.
we're not we're not having time to go and say, well,
Just focusing.
crap, actually you did that really well, but you got held.
There's
or
a lot of
something
truth in that. When things are going as poorly as they're going, you have to triage and fight the battles you can afford to fight, and you
Right.
just can't mess with everything.
Just focus
So
on
maybe
the
this gets
basics.
better as time goes on, and we can get to these details, if you will. To transition to some of the positives, one of the positives I saw tonight was, I think, physicality, where we seemed very physical and in better shape than Florida State. Florida State, unless it was a technique and they were faking, they were injured a lot across the board. They, at the very least, had to come out of the game in many cases, and we didn't have that problem. So I give a lot of credit to Jerry Schmidt and the entire program and the positioning of where we were. Now, maybe some of that was we're playing a lot of young guys who weren't beat up throughout the season, whereas they're playing veterans.
Sexton got hurt early on in the game,
Okay.
Yeah.
and Parks came in.
Yep.
But otherwise,
Yeah.
we saw a lot of injury timeouts, and they were almost always a Florida State guy down.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe every time.
Minus
Florida State
Woody
guy.
Washington.
Yeah. Yeah.
he-
Woody was the only guy that went down
He
on
came
the
back-
field,
he came
and he
back
came
in.
back out.
Yeah. So
So-
that's something to be
Their
positive
big time
about.
safety got hurt, but he came back in and made
And
plays.
ruined our lives.
Yeah.
Pretty much ruined our fourth quarter comeback. Then.
Yeah. I would say one of the weaknesses, and I'm going to spin this as a hopeful for the future, one of the big weaknesses tonight was in the secondary for the defense of OU, and that's where we're going to get a lot of help really fast in terms of the people we've recruited. Do we have a transfer guy that's in the secondary? No.
Yeah, we do. Texas Tech guy.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
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 Pearson.
Yeah. So we definitely are getting some help in that department, which should be good. The
He probably
defensive
takes
line.
Spoil's spot right off the bat.
Oh.
I
Oh
would
yeah,
hope
probably
I
so.
would hope so.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's
there's some guys that are going
Colin
to probably
didn't
move
look very
on.
good tonight.
Colton looked
Which
like
is
Colton had a
shocking.
rough night.
He's played
looked
really well
good the
recently.
last
Probably
5 games of the
our
year.
best cornerback in the
Right.
second half of the
Yeah.
season.
And then just something wasn't right.
Well, I
today.
mean, it's like you
It
said
was
all
probably the
game.
size.
Well, that's the
it
thing. You
was
said
the
all
guy
game.
he was on.
Number
all
14
night.
was
Yeah.
a monster.
He's really tall and he was fast and bodied the catches.
Well, and you got to give Florida State credit. They exploited the hell out of the zone that we were running. Like,
Which-
I mean, they found holes everywhere.
Yeah, which
So-
one thing you just brought up to the physicality point is the fact that our secondary is still tiny. We don't have guys big enough to deal with a receiver like that.
And not very fast.
no, I mean
That's a bad combination.
Yeah,
slow and tiny.
you don't have a single guy on the defensive, secondary that you could put up against that guy and it's going to win that matchup. I mean, I literally don't even can't think of a single guy that you could put that would maybe win. They're completely outmatched over there.
But we should get some help there. I think the defensive line looks pretty darn good.
The first half, they got a lot of pressure. I don't know if Florida State changed their blocking scheme or we got tired, but the second half, we didn't get as much pressure. I think the threat of the quarterback run
Their
from
options,
the first
their
half
options were working a lot better.
really made our guys not attack in the same way in the second half as they did
Yeah.
in the first half, and it caused less pressure.
Travis was running the RPO a lot better in the
Well-
second half as well.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to say on Travis / our linebackers is we spied him often, and he was still able to run pretty much whenever he wanted to.
Especially the third. And
So that's what I don't understand.
sevens.
Our spies, we noticed they seem to be way too close to the line of scrimmage. If you're spying, you don't have to necessarily be on that line of scrimmage.
Should probably be about 5 yards back.
right, and
least.
flow with the quarterback.
And
Better
if
allow
if he
him.
steps up, you step up.
Yeah, it's like they were getting lost in traffic, and Travis was able to run wherever he needed to when it happened.
Well,
Key Lawrence missed at least 3
Oh.
tackles that would have stopped the drive. On
Man, he's been
on
a liability,
third and
though.
5, 6,
It's wild.
7s.
He's been a massive letdown.
And Travis went to go run, and Key was there and just
Yeah.
whiffed or.
He looks like one of
didn't
those
hit him
guys
hard
that's just
enough.
been in his head. Like, he was the guy last year
Right.
amongst a bunch of pores
Yeah.
and could not put it together being the guy. So,
Yeah.
So one of the things I'll look for going into the next season there is a defensive line that gets the same penetration or better, hopefully, than that we got tonight, but actually can physically make the play. So we were getting pressure but not able to close that 1-2 foot gap or get hands on a guy and actually bring him to the ground.
Yeah, being in
We
his
can
face but
get a
not
guy who
finishing the
can
play.
close that gap and physically bring them to the ground. I think that's where Brent Venables wants the defense to be. And so that'll be a big difference. If we get guys with speed who can close those gaps and guys with it's speed, it's talent, it's a lot of things. When you're doing a spy on the quarterback or whatever it happens to be, when you're better, the game slows down, and you're just able to do, and you can make mistakes, and you make up for those mistakes with your speed and your talent and everything else. So all of those things start to get better for us if we truly are getting better. As we get better talent, that'll make everybody better. So if you look at the defensive backfield, or really the entire defense, and you start to insert new players and better players, so you take a guy this year and replace him with himself next year as a better, stronger player, that is an ability to be better as a defense as a whole. But not just that, if you replace somebody on the field, it's not, let's say that we're just talking about cornerbacks, and let's say that I'm your best cornerback, and I'm not very good. I'm going to go up against your number one receiver. So then if you go and recruit, which we have, really good players at cornerback, and that guy replaces me, the difference isn't me versus him. The difference is me versus the guy I'm moving into the other spot and replacing.
Yep.
And so it starts to make everybody look better, because now I'm going against the number two receiver. This better player is going against number one. So it should start to get better fast if we truly are, and it looks like we're not just, I mean, we're clearly recruiting at a high level, but also hopefully developing at a high level with adding to skill sets, obviously getting stronger or trying to get stronger. So all of that gives me
We
hope.
need to bring in a portal kicker,
And a D-tackle.
because we missed a field goal today that should not have been missed. It was not very, what was it, 40 yards?
Give or take it.
We lose the game by 3 points. We miss a field goal.
We've lost 4 games since Texas by 3 points exactly.
Yeah, and he's missed, what, 3 or 4 field goals this season?
Oh, at least, yeah. I mean, it's, yeah.
And we're not
it's-
talking 55-yarders. Those
No,
are completely
no. Talking
unacceptable at
about
the college
something
level.
a division
Right.
a Division
We're
One
talking
Power 5 kicker
35
should
to
make.
42 yards. Those should be.
I don't care if you're a freshman or not.
That should be 95 out of 100 you're making, unless it's extreme wind, or they get a bunch of
I don't know if
pressure.
I'd go that high. I'd take 80 out of 100, and that's pretty
8 out of-
damn good.
8 out of 10?
8 out of 10.
I'll take 8 out of 10.
Well, he might have made 8 out of 10 this season.
Not of the ones we're talking about that he missed. Yeah. So,
That definitely hurts.
That does hurt. That definitely
And what
hurts.
is he, a sophomore?
No, he's a true freshman, I believe.
He's a true
True
freshman.
freshman. So maybe he gets better. I mean, give a guy
Maybe
a
he gets
chance to
better.
get better. He's
Yeah.
gonna
No,
be
that
working on it in
position
the
position's
offseason.
wide open in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
with
The battle
today's
should
age
be
of
open.
portal, if there's a kid kicking at
Oh yeah.
Tarleton State that's
Right.
like incredible,
Yeah.
Well, that
bring
guy
his
is
ass
good.
in.
Yeah.
You don't know about Jacobson?
I mean, Coastal Carolina, Connor's second favorite
Yeah,
team.
right.
Maybe we bring that guy in.
And honestly, that's the kind of guy you can get, because
Yeah.
you're saying,
You can come
this is
play
your
in,
chance.
in the
Yeah.
best.
If you want to go to the NFL.
do you want to score a
Yeah.
lot of points?
Shit, we
And
pulled
you wanna be
Michael
on
Turk from
TV?
Arizona State.
National TV?
Yeah.
We got a punter from Arizona
Come on.
State who's
Let's go.
arguably the best punter in the nation.
Yes.
And you're going to tell me you can't go get that with the kicker? You can get that with the kicker.
Yeah, absolutely. You can.
Right.
So we should be attracted to that, and we should be open to that. Hopefully the coaches are looking there. But also hopefully Schmidt gets better in the
Yeah.
offseason, gets stronger, gets more confident. Again, just not having to rely on your kicker as much is good.
Yeah.
Now, you do want to be able to rely on a guy, and there will be a game down the stretch for any team where they're relying on a kicker. It's rare that you don't have a game where you're relying on a kicker.
And that series really hurt because we scored a touchdown that was called back on a holding.
Mm.
That was legitimate holding for sure. And then you do
Legitimate,
nothing.
but not critical.
Yes.
It was not directly involved in the play. I'm not saying it was a bad call.
Yeah.
But man, it was one of the when you look at the only one holding call against OU in 10 games, I gotta think there were some of those
Yeah.
or for OU.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. And we end up with 0 points in that drive.
Yeah, it really hurt.
That was definitely a major impact. Even though it was the first half, it definitely affected the outcome of the game.
Yeah.
And we've said it all season long in these 3-point losses. It's just 2 or 3 plays each game that are the difference in winning and losing. We could have easily finished this year 10-3
Right.
instead of 6-7 if you just
Oh.
make 1 or 2 more
So
plays a
close.
game, or
So
1 or
close.
2 less penalties, or 1 or 2 less field goals.
Right.
It's crazy how. And last year was the opposite.
Yeah.
Last year, all of those close games we won, other than
Happened there.
the 2
Not
we
just
lost
last
at the end.
year. Almost every Lincoln Riley
Right.
season
Yeah.
except for
Right.
17. So if those games do break our way, I don't want to try to just put a silver lining spin on everything, but is there a chance we're overlooking, or the coaching staff, more importantly, is overlooking flaws that they are now going to be forced to look into because the record is so bad? It's really hard when you have a losing record not to start being very self-critical and have difficult conversations. If you were to win, and we're probably in the same, close to the same bowl game, if we win several more games,
Right.
and you close the season out, say 9-4, 10-3 for sure, you're probably not as self-critical about stuff. So maybe, hopefully, it's an opportunity. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I am saying it's an opportunity to look deep into yourself and criticize and ask tough questions and make decisions that will be tough decisions, including potentially coaching changes, including potentially personnel changes, and also hold people's feet to the fire, make them accountable to what they're doing.
So to that point, that's one thing that I've looked at all year, is some of these tough choices that I thought they would make would be the personnel on the field, and why some of the young guys did not see the field, which I understand. We're trying to hold red shirts. We're trying to keep some of these guys around a little bit longer so we can maybe build something in the future. But at the same time, like you said, I mean, if we're a couple plays short of being 9-3, why aren't we making those plays? Why aren't we making those choices to get those players on the field? Why didn't Sawchuk see the field? And to that point, for the future, do you think some of the guys we're bringing in next year, like the talented recruiting class, are they going to see the field as true freshmen?
Right.
Or do we think we're going to let them sit and kind of learn and have another down year? Or are we going to say, hey, we really got to bounce back. We got to have a better year this year. We're going to start kind of losing some fans, losing some momentum.
I'll jump in and answer, but I want to hear you guys' answer too. So I'll say, to speak out of both sides of the mouth. One, I could see them saying in most cases, hey, we're so thin, we're on the cusp of being 9-3 regular season, moving to 10-3, etc., that we're trying to put the best players on the field and we can't afford to gamble with that. And then you bring up one of what's probably many good counterexamples with Sawchuk to say, yeah, but here's a guy who looked really good, and you didn't see it, and you didn't have him on the field. And don't make me bring up your lack of a backup quarterback. So can you really identify guys? Can you really develop them? And are you really putting every effort into getting a winning team out on the field? Because you might lose a game in Game 4, Game 5, Game 6, but you're developing yourself to, by the end of the season, look really strong and win games that we didn't win against Texas Tech and West Virginia and almost Oklahoma State and Florida State.
Well, how much did Venables keep guys on the field this year that he identified as the glue that kind of held things together as well? A Justin Broyles,
Deshaun White.
Yep. How much was he saying? And we haven't really talked about it in this regard, but how much was he saying? You're probably not the best guy for that position, but
You're such a leader.
You held this together. You led this team. You brought us up from the ashes of what Lincoln left behind.
What does that even mean, though? Honestly, he
but
wasn't
but I don't have any other explanation for it.
Yeah,
like I don't.
So weird.
Like you're not going to tell me a young Kobe McKenzie or a young Kanik who gets reps early in the season and is at a point now, if he's getting those reps early on, is in a completely different place than what he's going to be going into spring practice. Than where we're at. I mean, it's just. And I am concerned about that. Like, it is a coaching concern for me where we do have a bunch of young guys that haven't seen the field yet that are on the roster, and then we're bringing in a bunch of new, very highly touted young guys. Right. So where's the balance? Like, where's the give?
And they didn't hold the team together because we finished with a losing record.
Yeah.
You can't say,
maybe they did.
Yeah.
I have no idea how bad
Well, I mean, I can't
there
imagine
would have been a walkout.
I can't imagine it'd be too much worse, with
forfeited
some of
the
those guys.
last
You can't say like, oh, Justin Broyles really held us together to that 6-7 record. Great job, bud. I just would have rather have a guy out there at least 1 to 2 games. Or at least plays in the games.
It'd be interesting to know if they could do it over again, if they do it exceptionally different. I would like to hope that they did to some degree. Again, they can always fall back on, hey, we barely lost a lot of games. Things go differently.
Nebraska said the same shit last year, and look where it got them this year.
Yeah.
Well, Sawchuk's the perfect example, though. Sawchuk is the example.
Yeah. Let's go to today's game. Last year, Farouk showed out in the bowl game against
Right.
Oregon, and he was probably our best receiver this season. I mean, Mims was good, but Farouk seemed a little more productive.
Yeah.
Who from this game, other than Sawchuk, of course, did we see anybody on the field that got to do anything besides the offensive line guys?
No.
No. No. It was almost like
Lualu, from a defensive line perspective, maybe.
We saw several players make appearances, but not be consistent,
impactful,
or be there over and over. Now you're saying, I guess that goes both ways.
I'm saying, did anybody come into the game today that we really didn't see during the season?
Are you defending the coaching staff? In saying that?
Definitely not.
Well, it sounds like you are, because are you saying they didn't perform, or are you saying we didn't see them even on the field enough to see them make a difference?
I don't think we saw. I mean, you only have so many receivers. Gibson really didn't get a chance to do anything this year. Bunkley Shelton really didn't get a chance to do much this year. Nick Anderson didn't step on the field hardly.
You want a better matchup on that long play to number 14? It's like you guys said during the game, put Robert Spears-Jennings back there.
Yeah.
And if he gets hosed and he's not there, and if he's not, and I'm not saying Broyles was there covering the ball. What lost him that was the matchup.
The size,
That's a better matchup from a size and athleticism perspective, at least from on paper or what I can see from a size-wise. Like, why is Robert Spears-Jennings not even seeing any run at all?
So all of that scares me, because it all rhymes with, or is in the same vein of, trying to be too conservative and lose conventionally rather than win unconventionally. And that's something that I always fear the coaching staff is going to do, that's sort of their incentive base. And I worry about that. I worry about it both at a coordinator level and other assistant coaches, but also at Brent Venables' level. Is that the type of bad incentives or bad incentive-driven decision-making that's going on, even if they don't intentionally do it, that is going to cost us down the stretch? All of that gets erased a lot if you've got a lot more talent and you're able to put things together, but it may mean at the very least that it takes longer for it all to come together.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a 2025 or 2026 before you're humming, and you may not get that long.
Right.
Well,
and like we talked about with Sawchuk, he played great tonight, but he had a massive critical fumble in a bad situation, and we mainly blame it on inexperience.
Yeah, if he plays in 4 other games,
right? But if you have guys that are getting that playing time earlier, they're getting the game time experience is so crucial. You can't say, oh, they're learning great at practice, because I've heard so many things about Kobe, like you mentioned, Kobe McKenzie is playing great at practice. That doesn't matter. You're going up against twos on offense. I want to see him in a game. I want to see what he can actually do.
Yeah, there's no stats against that.
We saw Kanik in Nebraska. He looked great, and we're like, oh, well, we'll just wait till next year. I'd rather see him get playing time now and see what he can do on the field instead of, I'm all for Deshaun White getting a last hoorah, so is Broyles, but at the same time, I'd rather see a young guy in and kind of let them get some, let them get critical play experience.
Maybe we're just making assumptions. Maybe I'm making an assumption. Maybe I'm making assumptions that aren't
they're better
founded.
Yeah.
And
could be.
Maybe it is the fact that
it could be really tough.
Yeah. I mean,
they could be seeing stuff in practice that's so bad.
And we will never know. We will never know that.
Yeah.
That's what Levy said. I know after the Texas game on the quarterback situation, he said after looking at practice, we played the best guy with Bevel.
I cannot possibly give him a pass on that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what he said.
If it's true, it's still on him.
Right,
because
the report
he didn't
came out
develop
that
anybody.
Booty was actually going to be the starter, except that he had an allergic reaction or something and couldn't play that game.
Right.
So he was just essentially lying to cover.
Yeah.
You can't say that, though, if you're Levy. Like, actually, we didn't trust Bevel as much as Booty.
My bigger thing comes back to you ought to have 3 guys who can throw a freaking football occasionally that they can go out there. You did not develop backup quarterbacks. So that's my concern there. I wonder if in more of a long-term, this relates to our Jackson-Arnold conversation from last pod, are they very concerned about the idea that you actually can ruin a kid by getting him out there too early? And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, maybe they're not even thinking that, but that would be an explanation as to why we're not seeing kids a lot more.
Tell that to Troy Aikman. He starts the season in Dallas and goes 1-15, and then they win a Super Bowl. He took his licks.
Yeah, but he was a pro quarterback at that point.
Peyton Manning did the same. He was complete trash the first year. as a rookie, and then he's
Yeah,
turns into Peyton Manning.
I just don't think any of that in the NFL is applicable because the guy's played 3-4 years in college that are I'm talking about a kid who's a freshman in college. That's a big difference. And I'm not saying I believe it. I'm saying maybe they think it. And maybe they're worried about that. I don't know.
Right. I do think a little bit the landscape of college football has changed so much. I don't know if how much you can protect these kids, because as a true freshman, if you're really good and you're not starting, you're maybe going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, in this era, it's hard to do. I mean, Vince Young got thrown to the Wolves and played his freshman year.
And played awful.
And
then won a Heisman.
Right. No, he didn't win the Heisman.
No, you're right. And
He
national
should have won the
championship
Heisman.
and probably
Yeah.
should have won the Heisman.
So that was his junior year. So thrown to the Wolves first year, looked like crap. Got a little better second year. By the third year, he's the best player, second best player in college football.
Yeah.
Now, that's an extreme case. I'm not saying Jackson Arnold's a Heisman Trophy winner or, national championship leading quarterback his third year.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of cases that you sacrifice a little bit to gain a lot.
Know. I just don't know. I think it's probably person by person. I'm thinking of everybody. I'm thinking of Kanik. I'm thinking about all the guys you're talking about that we barely saw, Anderson, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what the right philosophy is. I'd like to think you have a philosophy and you stick with it, but I'd like to think you look case by case.
Yeah.
And you say, I've looked and talked to that kid, and I know he can handle it, and I've talked to this kid, and he can't be, just the same way that I'm going to get more out of you if I yell at you, and I'm going to get more out of him if I praise him.
Right.
And it's just, I got to go case by case, and I'd like to see them go case by case. And there's got to be more guys who should have seen the field more than they saw the field this year.
Damon Harmon was on the field tonight.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying Damon Harmon's not a good football player, but I also haven't seen a product from him where I'm like, that's a guy, whereas I want to go give someone the opportunity who has not had the opportunity to go be a guy or a difference maker. Put him in.
Who's the backup to Agwebu?
Kanik, I guess. I don't know.
Or Kobe.
Yeah. Kobe hasn't touched the field.
No,
Yeah,
Kobe hasn't
I mean,
touched the field,
Agwebu was a ghost in this game. I'd like to see the stat sheet. I don't know how many tackles he had.
I bet he had a couple assisted tackles.
I don't remember him like flat out one-on-one tackling anybody.
No.
But he might have gang tackled some guys at the line of scrimmage. But
Well,
that's a perfect case to me in this game that you could have put in the second half after you saw that he was indiscriminate and didn't do anything the first half. You put his backup in that hasn't played and just give it a go, unless they're just horrific in practice and can't be where they're supposed to be.
Right.
The most salient example to me that is going to be going back to Bob Stoops coming in as a first-year coach and then a second-year coach, and some of this is going to be just my attempts at recollection from 22 years ago, but there's all of that's a caveat to say don't take this with much more than a grain of salt, but it seems to me they did a lot of work and really good decision making in the first year, and I think into the second year even more so, of repositioning guys and getting them into different positions. So when you talk about these guys that seem to be in the wrong spot or seem to be not doing well in their spot, it'll be interesting to see if they're able to reposition them, and they didn't do so much of that this year.
DJ Graham
But
tried to.
next year, will they reposition guys and get them into a different position, or they don't see the field anymore?
And then they
how
transfer.
much of that will happen? And that's fine. And we're just looking at the guys that we want to have on the football field. And if you recruit 25 guys that can, that's your starting lineup, then that's it. That doesn't matter.
Well, and we just haven't had experienced guys who have checked the multiple boxes that you need. So, for example, we haven't had the size at corner that we need, and we haven't had the speed at linebacker that we need. So you got to hope you can find some of both of those things where you can get size and speed at corner, and you can get the speed and the size at linebacker. And we've criticized Danny a lot this year. I mean, and the guy led the Big 12 in tackles.
And he did really well tonight.
And he did. He played really well. There's nothing to scoff at. With how he played, there's still parts of his game that are like, man, if you can just spend an offseason, gain weight, and then figure out your assignments, you're going to be the prototypical Brent Venables guy. But I don't know. It's just... There's so many unanswered questions, and we're going to speculate about it until we get to
really
game one of next year. And we're probably going to
spring.
run the gauntlet of the first 3 non-con games and still have the same high, lofty expectations that we had this year.
I expect a lot of changes. I guess what I was saying a second ago is I expect to see a lot of changes at position. And either the guys that we've seen on the field that are coming back, either they are at a better level, at a different position, or they've been replaced as a starter with somebody else.
Yep.
And if we don't see that, I'm worried.
Yeah, one thing you said that I actually fully agree with is possibly looking at different defensive fronts, because we do have some guys like Danny who could completely play next year. He's not a guy that I think we're like wanting off the field. It's just, maybe we add other talent around him and switch how many backers we have out there and use them in a different way.
How he plays, yeah.
Like Agwebu is a great example.
Yes.
He may be. We're asking him to do things that we just know
Right.
he physically
Maybe
cannot
he's
do.
just not a guy. He should not be dropping in coverage, and that's the thing. And
He should not be covering the edge.
he doesn't though. Half the time he is blitzing and getting blown up by a guard.
Yeah.
And it's just a wash. It's a 1-to-1 washout. They don't have a guard. You don't have a backer. But that doesn't help us. I'd rather have a guy who can actually make a difference instead of just like kind of leveling the playing field. I want a
Right.
difference maker out there.
So I'm going to ask this again of the group, and I'm going to start with Christian because he wasn't here on the pregame to answer this question. I'm going to put it. I don't know if I put it this way, but I'm going to make the over/under at 6 games that Jackson Arnold starts at quarterback. What do you take, over or under?
This is assuming Gabriel comes back.
Assuming Gabriel comes back and assuming no injury. So just assuming wins the starting job. Over/under of game 6.
I want to say over, but I sadly think it's under.
Now that's interesting. You say sadly. You're saying that you think Gabriel. When you say sadly, it must mean that you think that Jackson Arnold's not that great as a true freshman, but he's good enough that he wins the starting job.
Yeah, I think Gabriel. Gabriel has these instances where he looks great. He had a couple balls tonight that looked excellent, like the touchdown to Farouk. That's a exquisite timing throw. You have to throw it exactly when you threw it. You had to place it exactly where you placed it. But he also had too many plays throughout the year that are just,
But those plays are too far in between.
for lack of better words, atrocious.
Look tonight at the lack of touch in those short passes and in the flats.
Especially if that's
that
what you're.
first throw where it's like the wide receiver screen or whatever he threw
To Stoops.
and he just airmailed the thing, and it could have been a backwards pass. The ref blew it dead, but we worried it could be backwards pass and went out of bounds.
Especially if that's what your offense likes to run. If you like to run these backwards passes, these swings, that type of offense, you can't have a guy that can't put those balls exactly where they need to be to get the receiver in stride and have him running downfield.
And there's as much technique to that little pass as there is the deep ball with timing and everything else.
Right. Yeah, so I worry a little bit that he's going to, and don't get me wrong, there are some games this year where the second you want to open your mouth and say something bad about Gabriel, he'd make a throw that made you kind of your jaw drop and go, wow, that was really good.
He made some really good runs tonight.
Yeah,
really good runs.
Athleticism. He has the two-way threat that you kind of want at that position.
Not enough of it.
Right,
probably.
not enough of it, but I think that's what he's going to do next year if he comes back, is he's going to do just enough to kind of earn that spot.
But you think he would give up that spot by 6 games in? What do you guys think?
I say under.
Yeah, I don't think he starts any game.
It won't surprise me if Jackson Arnold
unless
starts
it's injury.
outright.
Yeah.
I guess you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm saying the over/under is when Jackson Arnold starts.
Under.
You think he'll start sooner than game 6?
I would not shock me one bit if Jackson Arnold goes in there and wins the starting job in spring practice.
I think Dylan Gabriel comes back. Jackson Arnold doesn't start a single game next year.
Yeah, so you're over.
Yeah, so you're
saying over.
Okay.
I'm
saying
with you.
under.
I think it's going to be over. I'm afraid it's going to be over.
Right.
I think Gabriel will be just good enough that it'll be very difficult for Jackson Arnold to be on the field to earn the starting job, which is kind of a good thing, bad thing. You look back to Caleb Williams winning the starting job. He won it out of difficult circumstances. Shoot, I'd like to see us be 10-0, and in our hearts saying I want Jackson, but at the same time, okay, we're good. We're 10-0. I'm kind of afraid we're in that position, and back to the idea of throw a young guy in there and get him experience. It might be really good for 2024 if Jackson Arnold's in there sooner, as long as he doesn't get burned. So maybe Connor's the most optimistic here, thinking that Jackson Arnold
100%.
wins the job.
And it's based out of frustration, I think. I think if I sat and thought about it, Gabriel comes back. Gabriel is Levy's dude.
It's so hard to
It is.
displace a seasoned veteran with a true freshman.
And it is. And I'm.
But it happened last year.
But
It
that
did,
dude
but
looks
at the same
He
time.
and
looks good.
Clemson's wishing they'd done it this
Right.
year.
Right. Yep.
But
mean,
that's
it's
the thing.
not-
It's like
it's
I
not
think
unheard
there's
of.
I think there's a lot of there's a
Rare.
lot of silly blind coaching
Bomar.
decisions that are made. I think a lot of blind coaching
Bomar
decisions are
replaced.
made based on
Thompson.
experience.
After a half.
I would say Paul Thompson
After a half of football.
was not at the level.
Paul
of
Thompson was a
some of
wide
these guys.
receiver.
Yeah.
No,
He
he,
started-
wasn't. He was a quarterback.
He was a wide receiver.
No, he was not.
So okay, he came into OU as a QB, and
Paul
he
Thompson's
should have been
the
a
most clutch third down
WR.
quarterback we've had at this university.
What'd you say? What'd you just say?
I didn't
What
stutter.
did you just say? No, I.
Paul Thompson's the most clutch third down quarterback we've had at this school.
No, it's no. He's
Kyler
not.
Murray is
Kyler
on a
Murray and
plane.
Baker Mayfield were both better.
Go
than
back
him.
and watch the 06 season.
Go back and watch the 2017 and 2018 season. When I
Yeah.
don't care if it was 3rd and 8, we're gonna convert.
We're going to convert. Like
It doesn't matter. We're scoring the
He
ball.
did too.
No, not at that level.
Well, I do think it's rare.
I'm not saying he wasn't good
I
at
do
it.
think Jackson Arnold
Oh, you
is
just said he was wide receiver.
extremely good.
Yes. essentially.
Jackson Arnold's definitely not a wide receiver. Neither is Dylan Gabriel.
We have to see something more from Levy. If he's still the offensive coordinator after this season.
Yeah, and that's the better point.
If,
The concern
if
is with
Brent
Levy.
decides
It's
to
not
make a
necessarily
change,
with Gabriel.
I'm on board. I don't think Levy's the guy. I didn't think he was the guy coming in. I don't think he's the guy now. Unless
think he will?
Unless he goes and meets with a better offensive coordinator in another school, like, people used to come talk to Lincoln in the offseason and kind of learn his scheming and stuff like that.
Right.
And then they would input it in their school and they got better. Unless Levy goes and does that this offseason, I think his offense is stale. Too many jet sweeps, too many swing passes, nothing creative whatsoever. And I'm not talking trick plays. I'm talking about just
yeah.
route trees. Like, it's not good.
I agree with all of that. I will say I hold out hope on the side of Levy that was somewhat a Dylan Gabriel situation, that Gabriel can't make those plays.
Agreed.
But I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And that's
It
the thing. I
remains
don't know
be
where to
seen.
draw the line. Like, where do I draw the line of Levy is limited because of the personnel he has, as opposed to Levy is just limited in his mindset and his game plan.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and maybe it's both, but
And I don't want to see us. I want to see a move made because I want a guy who is so damn good. We are disappointed, but knowing we're losing him to a head coaching job in 2 years. I want to see that
Kevin
happening
Wilson.
on a regular basis.
or
Right.
Bill O'Brien at
Mangina.
Bama,
Yes,
or
I don't
Lane
want to see
Kiffin
a
at
guy
Bama.
who's just good enough and a defense that's so damn good that it bails a guy out and he can just linger. I
Yeah.
don't want to, and I worry about that. I don't worry that he's so bad that he gets canned, because that we can live with. What would be awful is if we're stuck in some local maximum that we can't get out of because we're just good enough in that facet of the game at a very
But it doesn't put
critical
us
facet
over
of
the
game.
top.
Especially if you talk about to kind of counter Connor's point, is if we have the guys that are more talented than everyone else. I mean, for next year in the Big 12, we should have those guys. We should have the most talented guys in the Big 12. So if we don't have guys that are out there beating, Texas Tech on an easy play call by Levy, it's going to look good. We're gonna say he's doing just enough because he's calling a basic offense, and we have more talented guys that can win on a basic offense. But we're going to get in those crunch situations late if we happen to make the playoffs, and maybe Levy is not that guy at that point.
No,
They
it's not
happen.
happening. We will.
It's done.
We will be there. Don't worry
They've
about
already
that.
booked the tickets.
Don't worry about
I
that.
That's the
got
funniest
two
thing I've heard all
positives
day.
and Lucas laughing. So
Well, we know it's a for sure thing. Lucas doesn't understand. I can't wait till where's our first playoff
I can't
game
wait
next
till
year?
the preseason
Do we get to be in
pod
Jerry
when we
World?
pick our.
I think the Rose Bowl is next year.
Oh,
our
nice.
season
Is that
standings.
the semifinal?
Rose
Or the
Bowl
championship?
and
Can't wait.
Sugar Bowl, I believe.
So we'll probably choose the Sugar
We'll
Bowl.
choose the
'cause
Sugar
we're gonna be
Bowl as the number one. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that'll be closer for us. And then
Yep.
where's the championship? Is it in Jerry World? Is it going to be Indianapolis? Is it back in?
It won't matter because we won't be there.
It's in LA this year, so
Is
it'll
it
probably
LA?
be
Yeah.
somewhere central or
Yeah.
east.
Maybe up
Maybe
in
Indianapolis.
Oh,
Indianapolis.
so USC gets a home game. Damn, that sucks.
They won't be in it.
I'll take that bet right now.
Well, we got that. Obviously, alludes to a lot that we have to cover here in the postseason.
Yeah, we'll have to do a postseason wrap up.
We're
It's
going
going to
to
be
do a postseason
repetitive,
wrap
but
up. We're going to do some off-season pods here and there. We'll be talking about some more general esoteric topics.
oh, you covered the spread tonight.
They did cover the spread tonight. They
They
did.
did.
Then Lucas owes me breakfast
Yep.
because
So
of
Lucas owes breakfast.
That is a
Lucas
fact.
lost everything.
Yep.
He lost the lock of the week. He lost which is the one thing all of
The
us
game
hurt. He
was
lost the
worst.
game,
Yep.
and he also lost the breakfast bet with Connor.
Yep.
So all around, Lucas is the big loser of the night. That realism lost tonight.
We gave
So
up
did the
7 less
Sooners.
points than I thought we would.
So did the Sooners. But I think there is a lot. Let's end on this. Agree or disagree. There is a lot to be hopeful for and positive about going into the next season. I believe that.
I would agree that you cannot not be positive with the number 5 recruiting class in the nation.
Right.
It can't get worse.
That's probably the most
That's-
we can get out of Lucas.
That's all you're getting from me.
I'll take
It
that from
can't
the
be
realist.
worse.
I'll take that from the realist.
I like that. Well,
Christian, you think? What do you think?
I'm super hopeful for next year, and I don't know if that's the fact that we have such a good recruiting class and guys can play next year, or if the fact that Texas this year, I said, man, I can't wait for 2023 because 2022 is a wash. So it's just ready for it to end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm hopeful for next year. I think it's going to be obviously much better than this year.
I'm
So.
just ready for softball pod season. Let's go.
softball season is about to be upon us. We need to catch some basketball games. We may chime in with some basketball.
Definitely going baseball
Hopefully
this
some good
season.
basketball. Going to some baseball. We
Yeah.
got to walk down the street
gear
for
up.
me to go
Gear
to
up for some baseball games for sure.
and just enjoy it. We're going to hit the spring.
It's going to be here before we know it.
Before we know it, it's going to be September, and we'll be back at it, guys. Well, until next time, Boomer.
Sooner.